Welcome to the CPM Customer Success Podcast, where we help Office of Finance leaders find an exact solution to enhance their corporate performance without spending nights and weekends in the office. I'm your host, Andy Smetana, with Nova Advisory. Nova Advisory is a 100% OneStream professional services diamond implementation partner. We help OneStream customers and prospective OneStream customers get the most out of their OneStream investments. Speaking of getting the most out of your OneStream investment, we have a special download for you to help make the best CPM investment decision for your organization. Check out the Nova Advisory website at novaadvisory.com/podcast. Download our free CPM Customer Success software evaluation and selection workbook. Each of the criteria described in the workbook has more detail in an episode of the CPM Customer Success Podcast, and those are referenced in the workbook itself. Explore deeper what makes OneStream unique as compared to other CPM solutions. It'll guide you through your CPM decision process for your organization. The workbook's free to listeners, so check that out now. So for this episode, we have a Nova Advisory Customer Spotlight with Mauser Packaging Solutions CFO Aldo Tesi. We want to pay close attention to this episode as Aldo describes business challenges that led Mauser to evaluate and ultimately implement OneStream, including the need for better data, more granular reporting, and improved accounting processes across their complex global organization. Aldo also covers overcoming data and adoption challenges, tangible benefits Mauser's realized as a result of the OneStream implementation, such as faster financial close, better visibility into profitability by product and plant, and the ability to quickly onboard acquired businesses onto the platform. Joining Aldo is Nova Advisory's own Sal Messina, partner with Nova Advisory. Sal was responsible for Nova Advisory's work on the Mauser Packaging Solution and work closely hand in hand with Aldo on their OneStream implementation. So let's get into the conversation with Aldo Tesi and Sal Messina. Welcome to the CPM Customer Success Podcast. We've got two special guests today. We've got the CFO from Mauser Packaging, Aldo Tesi, and we've got Sal Messina, a partner with Nova Advisory. Aldo and Sal work together on Mauser's successful implementation of OneStream. And we're here today to talk about that journey, talk about Aldo, your career background and how you came about to working with OneStream and the successes and all the challenges, successes you've had along the way. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's a good topic. I think something that's really made a meaningful difference in my time at Mauser so far.
Wonderful. Let's just get right into it. And I'd love to hear, Aldo, just about your career background, some of the leadership roles you've held in finance and accounting, and what your current role as CFO of Mauser Packaging is all about.
Sure. Just some background. I've worked at a handful of companies during my career, each of which were large, complex, multinational organizations. Started my career at a multinational industrial company called SPX. And while working in their automotive segment, joined Bosch through a divestiture. After Bosch, worked for a packaging organization called Signode, which was owned by the Carlyle Group when I joined. And while at Signode, we sold the company to Crown Holdings, which is a company that primarily makes beverage cans. And then finally, a few years back, I joined Mauser Packaging Solutions. Mauser is one of the world's largest packaging companies. We've got around 12,000 employees across 20 countries, over $4 billion in revenue. And we're making rigid packaging, so things like paint cans, aerosol cans, plastic pails, steel barrels, plastic barrels, things like that. So a lot of business-to-business activity, a lot of plants, really a great organization. And really throughout my career, I've always tried to put myself in positions where I gained experiences that gave me some credibility into my leadership roles. And I think some of these experiences also gave me knowledge and foresight about what sort of things to consider when implementing OneStream. I've got a history of accounting roles, FP&A roles, audit roles, some project management roles, been part of M&A, really from each of the angles been part of post-merger integrations, implemented shared service, done restructuring, ERP implementations, staying busy.
A bit of everything.
Yeah, but I think another meaningful element of my career, I've spent around 9 years working abroad in China, France, and Germany. And really, that's been meaningful for me because it really teaches you how to get outside of your comfort zone and listen well and understand that sometimes people doing things a different way can also be okay. As it relates to my role as CFO at Mauser, I've been here for a couple of years. I joined originally as corporate controller before assuming the CFO role. Mauser's a great company, but really still has a long way to go before getting to the standard that we strive for. And really, in addition to the traditional accounting duties of the finance function, I spend a lot of my time trying to help the company make more money. And for that, at least from my typical approach, that starts with having good data and with the right level of detail. And from that kind of data, you can spot where you need to have a discussion or a deep dive, which leads to taking action and improving results. A lot of the impetus of implementing OneStream originated with saying, how do I improve our ability to manage the business in addition to complying with all the different accounting requirements that we have in the organization.
Okay. And I recall you mentioned Signode. Signode's also a OneStream customer, and you mentioned the M&A activity with Crown. Is that where you got exposed to OneStream?
Yeah, that was when we were at Signode, we were evaluating OneStream even before joining Crown, and we ended up working with Crown to implement OneStream there. It was a really successful project, and that time Signode was on HFM, Crown was on Hyperion, and in addition to enhancing the quality of our reporting, it was part of our way to integrate our reporting with our new parent company.
Okay.
Yeah, just to expand on that, Aldo's been with us from a Nova advisory perspective from the very beginning, right? Crown was our first, the Crown Signode implementation was our first implementation of OneStream, and Aldo was significant in getting that going and getting that moving. And it's just been a great relationship to be able to take that to the next level through a couple of companies and just see us be able to do this in a couple of places. So thanks for all your support, Aldo.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let's, I guess, fast forward from the Signode days to, you mentioned you joined as Mauser Packaging Solutions controller. You probably got your feet wet a bit and started to see some of the challenges you'd like to solve for. And as you became CFO, maybe you could just walk us through what business challenges you were looking to solve and why you considered OneStream to solve those.
Yeah, it's funny as I think back on that, there was a lot of different challenges to solve. I think Mauser's history was, it grew through a lot of acquisitions, and we had an international group with a consolidation system, and then we had some US groups that didn't have as much entity complexity, and they really reported their numbers to corporate through Excel. And so one of the initial problems we had was just how do we aggregate our data in a way that's consistent, controlled, certainly much faster. And so that was certainly one of the problems that we wanted to solve. But embedded within that problem was the fact that the international group that really wasn't aware of all the different corporate requirements that we had was governing that other consolidation system. And so part of my challenge and goal was to take over consolidation activity at a corporate level instead of relying on people that are good accountants, but not the company's best accountants to be running that system and providing that governance. Another challenge that we were trying to overcome when I joined Mauser, we had several significant control issues. And one of our important approaches to mitigate control risk was through having really solid entity level monitoring controls. And what that basically is that I know I've got people looking at numbers that I'm looking at numbers at a level of detail that allows me to get comfortable that nothing materially incorrect has happened. And so at that point in time, my ability to review to the required level of detail to get comfortable was impeded by the systems that we had. And so that was another challenge I was trying to solve for when implementing OneStream. And that really allowed us to get cleaned up in our chart of accounts, get much more granular in the sort of reviews that we do, and really be able to control the process. So I felt comfortable that we had one source of truth in our numbers. And I think a final issue, and it's particularly important in our business, is that really to manage the business, you've got to get into detail. And Mauser, we're about $4.5 billion in revenue, around 200 different manufacturing plants. And so you do the math, you've really got a collection of a lot of small businesses. And so for you to understand what's happening in your operations, you've got to review detail. And in the prior setup, I was getting aggregated results from the different business segments that we had, but it was really complicated for me to get to plant level detail or to product level detail. And being able to get to that level of detail was another thing I wanted to accomplish with our implementation.
Okay. Did you have any kind of reservations as you considered OneStream? You had prior experience, so you had good knowledge of the capabilities. But as you went through that list of challenges, were there any kind of concerns with OneStream or overcoming those?
As you mentioned earlier, my first OneStream implementation was at Signode while I was part of Crown. And at that point in time, I hadn't heard of OneStream. It was a relatively new product. And I in my career, I used things like Hyperion or HFM. And so really my only reservation was just that it was unknown at that point in time. We got a demo. I watched how it worked. Honestly, it looked very similar to what I was accustomed to. But you know what also sold me on it was some of the additional features that were available in the system, particularly around dimensionality within the accounts, and that's dimensionality allowed us to solve some of the goals that we had around embedding plant level reporting within my P&L structure, for example, or embedding product level reporting within my P&L structure. And that dimensionality was really fundamental to the end result that I liked. And so when I finally understood how that worked within OneStream, I think it was a really easy decision for me to move forward with that product. But then obviously for Mauser, I was a sponsor of doing that again and was looking forward to working with Sal on another project. So a lot of hurdle on the second time.
Yeah, and I think it was a cool experience for us because probably more so than any other sponsor, Aldo, you really got in there and really gave us your vision and kind of what you were looking for. And we were able to build some cool stuff where we could collect information at a product or a plant level. We collected it. Where we needed to run allocations, I think we were able to build a very kind of versatile application process so you can select your methods, select your drivers, and get you to that level that helps you make decisions. That's probably the biggest thing we look to get out of here is just reporting the numbers is one thing, but if we can give you something that actually helps you make better decisions, then we know we're going in the right direction.
Yeah, so you touched on what you're trying to solve for, Aldo, and you focused on the need for better information, better data, and you talked about dimensionality. Were there any other kind of complexities you overcame as you actually worked through the project itself? And can you talk about how you overcame those?
Yeah, projects are difficult, and I think we did a pretty good job of really assessing what this project is going to need to be successful. And I knew going into it that we had an inconsistent chart of accounts across the organization. And so really before even getting into the technical phase of a OneStream implementation, we went through a 6 to 9 month exercise internally to really get our act together as it relates to our chart of accounts. And we ended up, revising that and implementing 90% of what we were going to want, even within our own environment, so that when we got to the technical piece of this, it wasn't too difficult. So that was a complexity that we knew we're going to need to overcome. And I think because we understood what was going to be difficult in the project, I think we managed that.
Yeah, you guys definitely came prepared on that one. So that usually is one of those biggest risks on our project, that we're spending a lot of time developing that chart while we're trying to develop the application, and definitely a good call.
Yeah, I think also, and this is really unavoidable on really most projects, another complex piece of this is really just adoption of the organization and training. And I think we did a lot of good things as it relates to training, but sometimes you can't really solve it until people just start using it. And so we've got 50 reporting entities across the company. At Signode, we had 100. And in both cases, it takes some time for people to get comfortable, but we, as part of our project approach, we had 2 or 3 parallels that we went through in order to validate that people were comfortable before cutting over to our new environment. And again, I think that was a good solution to not only do training, but to do a couple parallels and make sure we were ready, not just from a system perspective, but from a people perspective.
I'm curious, Sal, any kind of comments or things that are unique to the Mauser Packaging Solution that you saw during the implementation that we worked through with Aldo to overcome?
Yeah, well, I think that just to add to what Aldo was saying, the parallels or the prototyping, this is when the standard way of going through, getting all requirements up front, sticking to that, and having a big reveal at the end. Oh, this is everything we built. In this space, we just recognize it doesn't work too well. You got to prototype, you got to get versions out so that people can understand how the platform's working, and you refine requirements that way. And there's a little bit of that back and forth. So I think that definitely helped us. I think we had a great team out there just going through. I think we implemented somewhat of an automated cash flow kind of from scratch and building that as we were going, and just showing the pieces of here's how you design roll forwards and building that piece and getting comfortable there and taking that next step of, okay, this is how it generates a cash flow. Not all that stuff worked out perfectly, but we got through it by taking it chunk by chunk and making sure we were just always making progress. We had a really good client who really engaged, really gave us direction, and that's half the battle.
Okay, let's talk about results then. Maybe Aldo, you can share the results you achieved and what the outcomes were from your perspective of the OneStream project.
Yeah, you heard me list my goals. I think we achieved each of those goals. So it's really been a great success. I'll try to expound upon a few examples here. I mentioned that this allowed us to get to a much more detailed level of reporting. So what does that mean? I think previously we were aggregating maybe 12 line items within a chart of accounts on a monthly basis in the company. We'd roll up some other data as part of our quarterly reporting, but that was the prior level of detail. And I think at the current level, chart of accounts, probably 150 line items on the P&L. So I can beat up really what sort of things we're spending money on, what sort of products are more profitable or not. And so it's a real satisfying level of detail. I talked about the dimensionality and how that was fundamental for our ability to embed plant results within our P&L structure. We've got 200 plants. I think at a group level, everybody's profitable. Everybody's performing fine. But when you go down to a lower level, what you end up seeing is that there's out of 200 plants, there's going to be 10, 15 problem plants that need some extra attention. And we didn't have that level of visibility at a corporate level. And as a result of having that, we were able to figure out where we can help, where we need to really push the organization to do better. But as a result, we ended up creating turnaround plans that were forcing the business to figure out how do we get this to a target level of profitability, or if we can't, should we do some restructuring? And so I believe that we wouldn't have done some of those turnaround actions for those locations if it weren't for the level of detail that we have in OneStream.
Now, those turnaround actions, were those identified by your core finance team or by the operations, or working in collaboration?
I think our operations knew about them, but the visibility that we would have at a corporate level would force urgency to the dialogue that we would end up having about it. And probably in some cases, even our local business units are actually getting better reporting out of what we generate at a group level than what some of their local finance people would have previously given them. So in some cases, this also helped the more local level business owner to understand their own results. But yeah, we were able to put appropriate scrutiny on things that needed attention. But it's not always about scrutinizing. I think there's some pieces of business that were really performing great. And we like to think about that as we figure out where to allocate capital, which is not just money, it's also time and resource. And it's just better understanding our numbers and trends. It helps us figure out where to spend our time. So it was a really tangible benefit of this implementation that I believe was, I guess, possible as a result of the extra detail that we had. On the accounting side, we've really through the sum of a lot of different things, we've gotten a lot better at how we handle accounting in the company. We've taken time out of our closed process, made it a lot easier for not just the corporate folks, but people that are actually submitting our numbers at our different entities. Time savings, while also improving the quality and control of what you have. That's a win for everybody. So that's been good. It's been more secure. I feel like my official numbers are my official numbers, and it's not a matter of saying which version was that spreadsheet. That's a terrible situation to be in, especially in a company this complex. So anyway, those goals were achieved. And really, we're not done getting benefits here. And I think really my approach to some of these projects is to do enough so that you get your initial goal done and you start enjoying some of the benefits. But there's other things that will continue to enhance in the system, either from a functionality standpoint or even expanding into some of the other features that you can do within OneStream.
Yeah, and I definitely want to hit on that, and I'm going to come back to that here in a minute. Sal, I'm curious about, I think you mentioned some of the interesting things that were developed to support all those level of detail down to kind of a product level. You want any comments or things you'd like to share on how we configured OneStream to align to achieve all those outcomes?
Yeah, first off, everything starts with actuals, and it really is just trying to figure out, do the locations have this information, and working with in some cases with their IT teams to pull what we can out of there. But a lot of it is to just round out that information by putting some logic and process around allocating what doesn't come in at that level and making it flexible enough that we could build one process where each of the divisions could select their own drivers and select their own approach. And it could be reviewed and analyzed by the corporate team and Aldo to make sure it was reasonable. I think we worked together to just refine that. We were probably not in the perfect spot the first time, but that's where that prototyping comes in. And I actually see it run through the system and say, oh, no, I didn't want to allocate it on a year-to-date basis. I want to allocate it on a periodic basis. Okay, let's tweak that. Or I want to be able to change the method here. So how would I build something around that? I think that's where we did a lot of our kind of configuring to specifically what Aldo was looking for to get to that level of detail and allocate to that level of detail, whether it's actuals, budget, and forecast, right? You have that level of information across all those scenarios, allows you just a lot more visibility and analytics ability.
Okay, thanks, Sal. So Aldo, back to you. Maybe you could share with other finance leaders and listeners that are maybe considering OneStream. What advice would you give to them if they're not really sure where to begin or where to start? Any advice on getting started or their roadmap?
Yeah, and some of this advice probably applies to really any project you're going to undertake. And I think you really got to know what you want to get out of it, especially on things that are system implementations. Data is really important, and you don't know which data is going to be critical unless you understand and can visualize your end state. And so I think we had a really good idea about what we wanted, and it was one of the things I really appreciated about working with Sal and the Nova team is that there was really good dialogue about what are we trying to do, how does the system work, and what data is going to be really critical for being able to achieve that. And then adding to that, having really good awareness about what your own data infrastructure is internally so that you understand whether that's even going to be reasonably feasible. Yeah, we were talking about these product P&L and plant P&L, and in that example, ledgers all have plant data. So that wasn't really that difficult to include as a dimension within the trial balances that we were reporting. But not all of our ledgers have product data. And so we generally had product data available at least a revenue and cost of sales level. But our goal was to have a full product P&L in addition to an entity P&L and a plant P&L. And so we're able to achieve all three of those within one data structure and solve for the data gaps within the product piece through some of the allocation logic that we set up, which was really derived by a set of keys that included the plant. And so that's just an example here where it's like, hey, I knew I wanted product. I knew I didn't have that data. And I was able to be pretty precise about how I got to product through a combination of what I had and through using plant to help derive the rest. And understanding what you want, understanding your data, understanding how that impacts your design. Those were really fundamental success factors for us.
I think if I can, I'll add another one too. You guys are investing internally in your organization. I mean, you have two admins who both contribute to it. They're really great. Being able to keep everything going, but also do some advances in here. It's a platform. It can do a lot of things, but it does require support to keep it going and making sure. And the test that I use, how many phone calls do I get after go live of issues? And there really hasn't been many, if any, really. I think we went live about a year ago. You guys have done a great job of taking it and owning it and learning it through that knowledge transfer process.
Just to round out in terms of advice, I think if I could add one more thing, internal team of the company really needs to own the project. The consultants can't give you everything you want. You got to really own it. You got to get people engaged. You've got to, I don't know, people are there to help you, but if you're not driving the bus with your co-pilot, the implementation team, I think, I don't know, I think it's really tough. And so you really got to embrace it if you're going to do it.
And you mentioned, you touched on earlier plans to continue rolling out the platform. Any comments you have on how you intend to use OneStream going forward?
Yeah. By the way, in the last 6 months, we've closed 3 acquisitions within Mauser. Each of those acquisitions, we've been able to roll onto the platform in the first month of their reporting. That was really great. And we were able to do that because we built a playbook about how to get somebody onto the system fast. And it was like, hey, what's the big deal? We did a implementation for an entire organization a year ago. We can certainly roll on a business in a month. No big deal. Yeah, that was one expansion that we did. Yeah, but we're also looking at some other functionality within the system. We're evaluating an account rec project and looking to start with that in a handful of entities. We'll figure out how much we expand that. And that's one where it's going to be a relatively easy project and easier for us to do OneStream because our trial balances are already existing within the tool. And versus somebody else's account rec tool, I've already gotten the difficult piece done by integration of the trial balance. So that's one that we'll do over the next couple months here. Like a lot of companies, we have sustainability initiatives, and as part of that, we're trying to figure out the best ways to track the data related to that. And so we're having some discussions around whether some of the ESG tracking tools that can exist within OneStream are something that we'd want to pursue. So that's another topic that we're looking at. I think we've considered it for some tax provision work. Honestly, I think in that we've got to get probably our act together a little bit more internally before we pursue that. But I liked what I saw in the system. I just think got to get some of the fundamentals in the data ready before we go that direction. We've got, prior to implementing OneStream, we already had a platform that we implemented for tracking our leases that we use for lease accounting. And we pay money for that other platform. I think we're going to look at whether we cut off that other platform and track leases within OneStream. And if we can do that in a way that saves money and effort, then that's another option that we could consider. Piece by piece, I think we'll figure out how to add more into it. But I guess I should mention, we use OneStream not just for the reporting of our actuals, but also for our budgeting, our forecasting. And I think that there's probably some functionality within OneStream around forecasting that I've got to get a little bit more familiar with and down the road could also consider.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we did a lot of driver-based budget and forecasting around financial statement level, but some of those other people planning and capital planning and other things where you can go to a more granular level. We've talked about coming back in the roadmap and seeing if there's any fit there.
Okay, as we wind down the conversation, Aldo, I liked your analogy about the CFO, you've got to drive the bus and you work with your co-pilot, your implementation partner. Any comments you have that you can share with our listeners on how they go about selecting a OneStream services partner, what they should look for, and questions and advice that you'd have them ask or recommend before they make a selection?
It's always tough it sounds like dating. It's like, how do you sort out How do you sort out the qualities of somebody you're going to work with? I try to find people that you can tell are excited about achieving a really successful outcome. I think one of the things I appreciated about working with Sal is that we have really good, healthy debates about how the best way to do something. And I got a lot of respect for him. And I think the expertise that he's brought into this project around the architecture and the way we, design things, and, then that he then helps guide the team to set up in the system. I think he's, certainly knows his stuff, but on top of that, I think that Sal, the reason I like working with him is because I know that at the end of the day, he gets really excited about making us happy with something we worked really hard to achieve. And if you can assess whether that's the sort of person that you're working with, I think that's really where you start. Obviously, it's great if somebody's got experience with something. And so I think try to assess the experience level of it. I know that when we've now done a few implementations together, Sal, and we know how we work. And I think you guys have a lot of good experience that we've leveraged during our implementation. I don't know, those are some of the big things, but you're not looking for somebody that's just coming in and trying to run the meter on your project expenses. You want somebody that's excited about delivering something.
Fantastic. Any closing comments, Sal, as you reflect back on the project?
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the comments, Aldo. And I think, as I said, these are fun projects in the sense that you're collaborating with somebody, truly is that pilot, co-pilot kind of situation. And you're really thinking through what's possible, right? When we talk about OneStream, the art of the possible, some projects don't go down that route. This definitely went down that route. I think we got to some great results because of it. And we did have a lot of healthy debates, a lot of healthy discussions, and we were definitely better off for it. And so it was a great project. Appreciate you and the whole team, and love to keep expanding this and do it again.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And Aldo, any closing thoughts? And if someone were to like to reach out to you and chat about your experience, may they do so, how to get in touch with you?
I think probably the best way to do that is to reach out to you, Andy, and to Sal, and you guys know it better than I do. And then if I can lend some perspective from my project, I'd be happy to take a phone call. But yeah, listen, closing remarks. I sleep a lot better at night having this system in place. It is a lot more fun to worry about managing the business, trying to drive profitability, than it is trying to figure out how to roll up data. I don't really get excited about the rolling up of data, but I love figuring out how to achieve good results in the company and make customers happy and make shareholders happy. And this has really allowed me to spend my time in a way that I enjoy a lot more. And it's done the same for my team, and that it's gratifying to know that they feel that way too. Yeah, it's been a game changer, and I'm proud of what our teams have accomplished together in our implementation.
Oh, we've certainly loved having you as a client and continue to love working with you, Aldo. So thanks for sharing your story on this episode of CPM Customer Success. Appreciate y'all.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of CPM Customer Success podcast. Remember to check out the CPM Customer Success software evaluation criteria and workbook to guide your CPM solution decision. The OneStream capabilities we've been describing in CPM Customer Success dive deeper into each of the criteria. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of CPM Customer Success podcast.